going on, guys? Brass Tacks here. Today we're going to talk about MGTOW, some of the pros and cons, some of the do's and don'ts, things that are associated with it, and give you my stance on some of the tenets of this doctrine, or what I think about it. For those who don't know, MGTOW stands for Men Going Their Own Way. It's a movement that's been gaining momentum more and more over the past few years. It's by no means anything new. It's just something that men have been doing on their own, but since the emergence of the information age, we see people that have been traditionally singled out or been by themselves have found online communities of interest or coys, and they've been able to find strength in numbers, and they've created mediums for people to express themselves and to gather and share their experiences. And some people would say that it's associated with the MRAs, or men's rights activists. Some people would disagree with that. I tend to believe that they're related, but there are some striking differences. Namely, you have women that are part of the men's rights activist movement, whereas men going their own way clearly is men going their own way. Now, you will have people, you will have women that will point to the MGTOW movement. However, and this is where we get into another difference, there's levels to MGTOW. There's the red pill, and there's purple pill, and there's a blue pill, kind of similar to the Matrix. And, you take the blue pill, you stay asleep and stay a white knight simping for all these women and personalities who want to take advantage of you and manipulate you for their own gain. Whereas you could be a men's rights activist who is in a relationship with a woman who believes in what you're doing and supports it, and has protests and writes letters and lobbies to their congressman, and has plans of lobbying for countering gynocentrism, and feminism, has a little bit more of a platform. MRAs do. It's a lot more recognition because, again, females are a larger part of that as compared to the MGTOW movement. There's MGTOWs out there that will that are in the quote-unquote red pill rage stage. There's guys out there that are considered purple pills, and there are guys that they're the guys that tend to still court and have relationships with women, whereas the former are kind of pissed off and hurt and want nothing to do with it. And there's another segment, the MGTOW monks, who pretty much have become comfortable and content with not having or pursuing relationships with women. They found that it frees up an enormous amount of time and resources and allows them to live a more fulfilling life. Purple pills tend to dibble back and forth, and they tend to regress. So, you can fall in any different category, really. I tend to believe that there's people who are going to think along similar and dissimilar lines, and they're going to believe that they may not fit into a particular pattern, and that's okay. You know, you don't necessarily have to fit into a particular category, but generally speaking, and I'm sure I've glossed over a couple areas. That's, you know, where you might find yourself. Some of you that might be older will remember Married with Children, and there was a man named Al Bundy, and Al Bundy was, I guess you would call him a purple pill, because he was married and he had a wife and kids, but he was in no way, shape, or form a simp or a white knight. He had a sense of what was right and what's wrong, but again, Al was one of those guys that didn't think that, you know, it was his responsibility or any man's responsibility to cater to a woman. He thought that the vast majority of them should be submissive and assist a man in accomplishing goals associated with the family and life in general. He didn't agree with being a submissive person in the family, or a submissive member of the family. But in his case, and in the case of some of the other people in his organization, which stands for, MAAM, by the way, stands for National Organization of Men Against Amazonian Masterhood. He didn't believe that men should be submissive to women. That just wasn't in Al's nature. And, so coincidentally, MAAM and MGTOW are really similar. Granted, Married with Children and MAAM is all fictitious, whereas MGTOW is something that's actually going on right now. We still see resemblances of it, and basically see that it just didn't pop up all of a sudden. Right now, I would say that there's a number of reasons for men to be going their own way, but there's also a number of reasons for women to be going their own way. It's not just mutually exclusive. However, for obvious reasons, I won't be speaking about women. I'll be speaking about men, MGTOW, and MRA. One thing I've realized about going your own way, so to speak, was that it requires a level of independence, requires a level of competence, and it requires courage. It requires a lot of courage to be able to say, you know what, I know society wants me to do this, but I'm going to do this instead, or I'm going to do that instead. There's a lot of pressure for men to comply with a lot of females in their lives, and unfortunately, that's led to those very same men being marginalized and not speaking up for themselves, because again, society wants them to fall in line with the accepted narrative, which leads to MGTOWs going their own way because they're not going to do that. There's a train of thought that says they won't be guilt-tripped into a life of servitude. And what that means is basically or no man that subscribes to that philosophy is willing to work to support the lifestyle of a woman who is using him for her sole benefit or to his detriment, in the sense that he's a pawn. he's not necessarily doing this because he loves her as much as he's doing it because he doesn't want society to call him a piece of shit. Now, unfortunately, that's a driving force for a lot of things that society has going on. We have a peer pressure, peer pressure system, basically, that guilts you or shames you into complying. MGTOW, men going their own way. MRAs, men's rights activists. No MAAM, National Organization of Men Against Amazonian Masterhood. Basically, men getting tired of dealing with flimsy shit. Difference is that a woman could be an men's rights activist. In fact, there's several of them out there on YouTube. And from what I understand, they make a pretty good living rallying the troops, so to speak, and talking cash crap about feminism and the gynocentric impulses of some of the women that believe that because they're educated, because they are of childbearing ages, yet aren't attractive, yet have unattractive dispositions and have daddy issues, should have a man fully dedicate themselves to them for their benefit. Not so much the man's benefit, but for the woman's benefit. He pretty much is the guy who picks up the laundry from the dry cleaners, does the shopping, gets the kids from school, and supports the wife's business career. And there's nothing to say there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's many families do that. However, if you were to take a close look at that man who's doing all that stuff, there's a chance that you might get a glimpse of a guy who's dead inside, because he's not living a fulfilled life. He's doing what society says is a good job, and unfortunately, it's not satisfying or rewarding enough for him to get rid of that dead look in his eye. I don't necessarily subscribe to no MAAM or MGTOW. There's a number of reasons why it wouldn't benefit me. Also, for the people that I have to be a role model for, I don't necessarily think that shutting yourself off would benefit you. I completely understand why men do it. I completely understand why there's a need for it, because there are some very cunning, manipulative, sly, deceitful women who use naive, well-meaning guys to further their goals. And that's not to say that there aren't men out there who do the same thing for women. There are. But women have people to speak up for them, namely the feminists. And, I mean, you know, think of Ann Coulter. That's a woman that feminists or oppressed women can look to make them feel better about their circumstances and to rally the troops, to give them a symbol of hope. Men speaking up isn't necessarily looked upon as a good thing because we come from a patriarchal society. However, I mean, with a little bit of research and open mind, you can see that men aren't necessarily in control as much as they used to be. It wasn't, the sexual revolution of the 60s wasn't that long ago, especially when you look at world history. It was practically yesterday, and on the historical clock, on when you look on the historical calendar. So it's going to take some time for some older generations to catch up and to acknowledge certain things. However, we can see that the balance is shifting. So I like No Ma'am. I think that you need, something. You need a fictitious men's rights organization to fight a fictitious feminine agenda in that married with children world. But I also recognize that men's rights activists, MGTOW, have agendas, have real world agendas, to the point where they are, they need to be recognized just as, feminists staging a rally against Donald Trump need to be recognized. The problem is that one is way more newsworthy and way more acceptable than the other. Because we have a history of being a patriarchal society, men's rights tend to be laughed at because they say, well, you already have men's rights. However, that ignores the fact that men have been placed in a more of a submissive role to women in recent years. So historically, yes, we have been a patriarchal society, but recently that has shifted. Since the 20th century, where women getting more legal rights in terms of voting and holding different offices and being nominated to for different positions, even being able to go to a war zone was restricted to men for a number of years. Up until recently, women weren't allowed in combat zones. So things are changing, and those who are in a position to know have decided that maybe, just maybe, there should be somebody to represent both sides. I believe that men have rights. I also believe women have rights. I tend to believe that my personality is I tend to be a little more dominant. So I don't find submissiveness to be attractive in the least bit. I don't think that would serve me too well, and the idea of serving at the bequest of a woman isn't that necessarily attractive, as a partnership would be. Something where it would be a little more equal. I mean, I heard one guy say that equality is a pipe dream. And if that's the case, then I guess that it's going to be a bumpy road ahead. Anyway, that's what I have to say about this subject right now. Like, share, subscribe, and let me know what you think, all right? See ya.